That's starting. Okay, great. I think we're live. So, hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for bearing with us for a few minutes while we got everyone on board. And ask Sam to introduce this.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So thanks again. So Sandra and I work on the World Bank Finances team, where we try to make open data about the World Bank more useful and reusable. And one of the things I think that we've learned looking at open data, how people are using it, is that there isn't a place where all of these are in one central place where people can find examples. And because ultimately, what interests us is, what are people doing with this? How can these solutions be adapted, scaled, or applied in other places? Basically, what can help people utilize existing sources of information, and how can this help them ask for other kinds of information that they might be able to use and be able to utilize in their work and in various different ways. So we embarked on this study with the IDB, and we're very, very happy to have Antonio with us as well. And so, Antonio, maybe you could say a few words as well about kind of what this project means and sort of why the IDB is involved in it.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everyone. So at the IDB, we recently launched 6 months ago a blog about open knowledge, and we discuss issues and developments in open data, open access, and developments in open knowledge in general. And we found that there is still an uneven discussion between countries about the open data. There are some countries that have taken the lead and are doing many things around open data. There's a lot of entrepreneurial activity. There are policymakers that are much more involved in some countries than in others, and I think there is a lot of potential in the region. So basically, with this study, what we wanted to know is to illustrate what is being done in other parts of the world and inspire people to think about new projects and understand the potential of open data. So it's a great collaboration with the World Bank because we can mix the experiences from different parts of the world, and I'm very much looking forward to today.
Thanks, Antonio. So I want to introduce our guest this week from Data Science LTD, which is a data analysis and research company in Kenya with services to government, local organizations, and businesses. Data science helps clients use available and new data to gain insights for planning, resource allocation, and profit making. Our guest and data science founder is Lynette Kwamboka, who has been on the forefront of coordinating the Kenya Open Data Initiative and the Open Government Partnership for the Government of Kenya and for the World Bank. We're really excited. Lynette has certainly been a friend of our program for years now, and we're excited to learn more about data science and the good work of her and her team. Yeah, so Lynette, if I want to turn it over to you to give us a little bit of background about the type of work that you're doing, and then we have some questions lined up for you. Yeah?
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Lynette Kwamboka, and I'm the founder of Data Science Limited. We do a lot of data analytics research aggregation for, as Sandra mentioned, multiple forms of companies, from government, civil society, and local private organizations. The main or key focus of our work is mostly just trying to get people to appreciate the power of data and what really data can do for their businesses or even the decisions that they make. For us to be able to see a nation or just the people that are able to use information very wisely and be able to make decisions, but also to be able to make lots of money. Yeah.
Great.
So if you don't mind, Lynette, maybe we'll just ask, dive a little bit deeper into some of the work that you're doing. And first off, I think it's really exciting. I mean, we've kind of known, we've known you and kind of followed your work for the past few years, and it's both remarkable, kind of what you're able to do, and also how many different stakeholders you're able to work with. But maybe we'll start with kind of when you started to look at when you were starting to work with data and open data. What made you want to start data science, and sort of what were the problems and what was the inspiration that kind of led you to do that?
Well, I guess my inspiration during my time at Open Data that pushed me to wanting to start my own company is the fact that I was in a unique position that allowed me to be able to see the real potential of data, especially at government level, and what could be done. And I tried to tell people who are in the private sector, because it's not the government's mandate to be able to make profits out of that kind of information. So I tried to have meetings with people and just trying to show them how to incorporate data within their organizations, or to even start their own organizations or companies that would dwell on data analytics as a concept, because I had seen a lot of the global northern countries had already started catching up with that. It was also in the advent of big data. But then mostly people really did not see that. So I thought it was an opportunity that presented a very clear gap in the market. It's not a very full market yet, but I thought there was a clear potential for what we can do and how we can grow everyone. So I decided I could just go out and just go ahead and do it. Yeah.
And in terms of the types of clients you have, are there any specific sectors or specific areas that you're working in that you see particular, where you see a lot more potential for the use of data?
Actually, it's amazing because our clients are just everywhere. We have a range from government, civil society, and private sector. So government, of course, it's always just about one understanding what data exists and how to put it out there in a way that is more useful for private sector and civil society. In civil society, most of the work is always around citizens. So trying to understand the citizen, why does a citizen behave in a certain way, and what kind of data would be relevant for them. So that is kind of very static. But then in private sector, it's just all over the place. We have people interested in various kinds of things in marketing, in jobs, in retail, in cars, and things. So it's all very, very different. There isn't one specific sector where I would say there's more demand than the other. The thing is, I know most of these are coming, but right now it's just scattered all over the place. So I think there's full potential for good data if it's available.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we could talk also about like the specific examples that you have. So you mentioned civil society. Could you share a little bit about what specifically you're doing with data, what types of data you're taking, and what sort of challenges the organizations they're trying to solve?
The one project that we're working on in civil society is on the data revolution, actually, which is just why should a citizen care about data? I mean, last week the World Bank had such kind of a forum where someone said, why should someone without a toilet care about data, about open data? So we're just going out and doing a lot more now. That is the research arm of the company, where we're doing a lot more research, trying to understand, speaking to people, and trying to not only understand why they should care, but then also trying to come up with a kind of a framework that would allow other countries to make their citizens care. I mean, if they use that kind of framework, that they would be able to achieve maximum returns on citizens being able to say, yes, we want more information to work. Yeah.
And what kind of tools and techniques are you using to kind of make the existing data a bit more relatable or understandable? Or is there a process for transforming the information?
Yes, so a lot of the work we do at the end of the day, the main product is always a data visual. It's the charts, graphs, we have maps. But then this is all written in JSON, D3, PHP, Java. There's a whole mix of programming languages that are out there right now. We have someone looking into R and trying to look more into statistical data analysis. So it's all demand driven. Depending on what a client wants, then we go out and look at what is the best tool to actually use for that. But mostly what we get, we try to say that what we're trying to do is to make data science as a concept as simple as possible and not presenting to people what they do not understand. So at the end of the day, after all the tedious work that goes in, what you see is the map, and you might think that someone did that in a day, but mostly a lot of what powers that is a lot more complex.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio, do you have any questions for Lynette?
Yeah, my question, I have seen that many organizations, and for example, the World Bank is incorporating now like data scientists in their organization as the main point of contact for what relates to data. And I wanted to hear your opinion on this, and how do you see organizations incorporating this role into their structures, and what do you think the potential can be for it?
There's very big potential for data right now to lie within organizations. I guess just like any kind of new concept, it's harder for organizations to invest a lot in having someone come in and sit within the organization and try to figure out. And I guess that's when outsourcing to companies like ours actually happens. But it's definitely something that needs to happen, and I'm sure the World Bank is already seeing the returns of having, a full-time data scientist within the organization. It's something that is definitely very important. It's not, especially in our world right now, something that is going to happen, very soon, because also some of these skills are not, when we're thinking about a data scientist, some of these skills have to be developed. So most organizations might not be willing to take that risk, or to start investing in that. But it's definitely something that is very important to do. Yeah.
And I had a question about innovation. One of the issues that interested me the most is what can open data do, and big data in general, for innovation within organizations, and specifically in development organizations. So I would like to understand, how could we think about like a framework where we can start explaining how open data contributes to innovation?
Open data definitely contributes to innovation in so many ways. And when you're thinking about the idea of open data, especially when open data becomes open government data, most of this data is just given out in its raw format. There's really sometimes no organization with it. It's unstructured, and I'm guessing it's out of this, which normally becomes big data, and it's out of this that we have innovations like NoSQL databases that deal with unstructured data. So there's a lot of innovations that can come out of one, structuring this data to make sense, and then two, just visualizing or analyzing these data for people who don't have the time or capacity to actually do that. So I feel there's definitely a lot of potential in that. Transforming these data from what we call interpreting, really, from that raw format that was provided as open data to a format that, when we're talking about development organizations, that a citizen can actually want to care about, or want to stop and think about, which is something that they normally don't have in terms of tools, techniques, or in just knowledge itself. So I feel there's just definitely a lot of potential in being able to be innovative around open data. But one big mistake that I see a lot of people making is they take one piece of data and want to innovate around that, without wanting to incorporate many other concepts to be able to come up with one more robust conclusion. Yeah.
Can you give an example of that mistake, if you will?
Well, we've had a lot about the app development concepts around the Nairobi tech events, and I have been in a good position to be able to look at some of these applications where someone creates an app out of data about hospitals. I have an app that tells you where the hospitals in all rural communities are. Chances are people who live in rural communities know where their hospitals are. So you creating an app really does not add any value, but you creating an app that tells them that hospital B, which is in another community, has a facility that you need for this kind of injury as opposed to your own hospital, then you're starting to add value because someone wants to say, well, I have this kind of illness, this hospital might be very close to me, but it will not help me, or it doesn't have enough doctors, or it doesn't have this specialist, I need to go to this other place. So, in terms of education, just showing where the schools are is not important. For me, making a decision about where to take my child to school, but telling me what the student-teacher ratios are, the performance of these schools, integrating that with, what are the dropout rates, for example. Those are some of the things, or which neighborhood. These are 3, 4, 5 different data sets that you mash up together, and out of these, you can create interest. But then, and then one last example is, I think a lot of people also create apps without necessarily taking into consideration the culture of the communities. So
But I mean, it was interesting to hear her talk about apps that are being developed and focusing on a specific data set versus actual need and thinking about like what the real problem is. I thought that was really interesting because, when we roll out data for people to use, a lot of times you kind of shove data at people and say, how did you use this? And that's, I think, it's not a very optimal approach, but one that a lot of people have tried, including ourselves. We've made that mistake in the past as well.
Yes.
And you get some interesting apps, but they're not very useful.
Lynette, you're back.
yes, I am.
I'm so sorry, we lost you. We were right at this really, really important piece where you're talking about the bringing in the cultural aspect of the community that you're trying to build this app for, and then you froze.
Technology happens like that when you need it most, I guess.
So I don't know if you have it in you to finish that thought.
I guess I was done. Yeah, I think I was just saying that people need to do a little more research to understand the communities, and I'm trying to speak a lot more on what Antonio is saying when we're talking about development kinds of organizations. You need to understand more where the communities are coming from. We had one example where a journalist went down to find out why these communities not using toilets, for example. And you would say, but our development organization spent so much money in building you all these toilets, but you've never used them. Why? And they say, culturally, I'm not allowed to go to the same toilet as my wife or my children, and my wife is not allowed to go to the same toilet as my children. So something like that. If these guys had done some kind of research before they spent millions building toilets, then they would have saved lots of money, or they would have done more sensitization before they did that. But yeah.
Wow, that's a strong point.
So I'm curious how you would redesign the way when people do apps challenges or hackathons, how would you reinvent that or redesign it in a way to optimize what you're talking about?
I think if I was to do an app challenge or a hackathon, I would do it over a week, where a week is 7 days. Have 5 days of people going out to the field and speaking to people, doing your research. And it reminds me about when I was studying data science. I spent the first 2 months just having lots of coffee, which meant sleepless nights, with people, finding out if you were to hire data science, what would you want them to do for you? Then understanding that, when I was thinking of studying, we were thinking about the complex kinds of predictive analysis and models using R and everything. As I mentioned before, it's just now we're having someone start to learn how to use R. Initially I was like, I have all this knowledge and we can study it, and then you realize people at a completely different level. So I would say going out, spending time with people and solving a need that is out there, understanding what people want, then finding the data, or then after that requesting for that data, and then building the apps. What's normally happens is people start building the apps while looking for the data, and then try to sell it to people. You end up with all these pink elephants while people just want blue ones. So yeah.
I'm sorry to keep asking more questions. I'm curious. So when I know this is difficult and probably that would vary across different clients and the solutions that you have, but what percentage of data that you're using is open data versus data that you're either collecting or that's proprietary to a specific source?
I could say 50%, except for situations where we are explicitly only required to develop an analytical tool for clients' data, then give it to them and move on. Uh, we use 50% open data on all the projects that we do. And this is 50% because we take what is available out there. So we spend lots of time at the National Bureau of Statistics Library. And then we try to, use this to advise what the client's data what the client's data says. So at any given point, there are only two data sets where there's open data and client data, and it's all 50-50 at any given point. Yeah.
Wow.
Antonio, did you have a question? You look ready.
Yeah. No, I had some questions about maybe indicators that you use generally to measure. I mean, one of the issues that interests us the most is evaluating impact of open data and reuse of open data. So I would like to understand more, how would you measure it, if you're actually measuring it in some way, and specifically thinking about one need that governments, I think, need to have, which is evaluating the impact of their public policies, for example, using open data. So what indicators, or how would you measure this impact?
I don't think that we have gone out to actually try and measure impact, because for us it's kind of very clear to see when you present to a client that this is where market data says you should, or this is where everyone else in the market is, and this is where you are. But I don't think that we have had to look specifically at the impact analysis in terms of open data. But I think for governments, one of the ways that they would, start to see the impact of open data, the data that has been put out there, is there could be something like how many businesses, are being started around data, to just see how effective the data or how useful the data that they're putting out is. How many references are on open data in research papers out there. Just this afternoon, I was speaking to a PhD student who's doing her research on open data. The unfortunate thing, especially one with what we have at opendata.go.ke, is we don't require that you report back to the government when you are using open data. So it becomes a bit harder to track really what the impact has been. But in terms of indicators, just looking at how many references, how many businesses have been started, but then if you go down to the citizens, how many conversations are being started just as a result of having someone sit a few people in a room and give them some data about what is happening within their communities. Yeah.
I have a question, Lynette. Do you have like a favorite outcome of the work that you've done so far? You don't have to talk about the name of the client or what specifically, but there is something where you came and were like, oh my God, I can't believe we did this, and share it if you can.
A favorite outcome, more well, I'll think of one that is specific to that, but more of a surprising outcome for us was for this one client where we're trying to compare how they're doing in the market, and we're using open data, of course, and looking at how the movement of the graph was so similar in their operations before they went full blown into market, and what the market had. It was a very small scale, and what the market had was very, very large. And then at this point where I was like, yeah, that's when I maybe started seeing advertisements on TV. Then I started seeing all these ads on the internet, and the data just went up and actually surpassed what open data has. And for a moment they were like, but that is not right. We cannot have better data than what is out there. Then I remind them, just look at the trend of the graph, it's still the same. You guys are still growing in the exact same pattern, only that now you have more data. But why do you have more data? Because you've been doing all these adverts. So just the fact that, whenever people think about open government data or just open data, it's not good enough, it's not accurate enough. So for me, that was an indicator that open data might not be exactly 100% full, but it's a good indicator of what really is happening out here. Yes.
That's great.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah. if Lynette, if you have time.
Lynette, is it okay?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I think one of the things that really I admire about the work that you're doing is how you're able to seamlessly cut through different stakeholder groups, DSOs, the government, the private sector, and I'm just curious. Of course, that's a great advantage to you because you understand all the different perspectives and you're able to kind of have that in that engagement. Is there anything that surprises you, or are there any common grounds or misperceptions that you think kind of show up more often than not?
I think it's more misperceptions because, as you say, I'm in a very unique position because whenever I want to scream at the government to give me more data, I remember, oh, I am actually that person. And then I think for me, one, it gives me a very good kind of grounding of knowing what to request. And as when I wear my government hat, it's also knowing what we can put out. And then, just that understand. But the biggest perception is always, unfortunately, comes from civil society, where there's always these requests that are being made, but then in most of the civil society forums, there's barely any government representative there. I mean, when I'm representing a client in a civil society forum, I am civil society, so I cannot be government. But then I give my perspective as government. But just that, governments don't, they don't release data soon enough. They don't, release accurate data. They don't do all this. There's always government. But then when you look at government processes of collecting data, a lot of people just don't understand that. But then again, I'm in a unique position because I deal with that every single day as well. But then, government collects data depending on which sector every 5 years, every 2 years, every 10 years. So one of my favorite things is I like to remind people that in, the last census carried out by the government was in 2009. The next census is going to be in 2019. So up to 2019, for 10 years, you're going to use predictively analyzed numbers. So there's never going to be an official statistic. So today you cannot say the government is not collecting this because some of these are really expensive to actually do. And I don't think there's, that there's a place where they carry out some of the statistics every single day. But then there is opportunity for collaboration between government, civil society, and private sector, because civil society collects some of this information almost on a daily basis. So if they were willing enough to share their data to complement what the government had, if the private sector was willing enough to share some of its findings from the markets with what the government had, then I think we would have a more robust kind of data set. But then, there's always, everyone is always going to be right, and every other person is always going to be wrong. But yeah, that's how partnerships work, I guess.
So you get to be right and wrong constantly.
All the time.
You're always right. You're always right.
Well, yes.
Did any questions come up?
I don't see any.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. Antonio, if you don't have any more questions, then...
Yeah. Now that you have talked about the census, I wanted to ask something. We are helping some municipalities start the conversation about open data, and basically they haven't done anything yet on open data, and I don't think they have the resources to go out and look for what people actually need in terms of open data. So at some point they have to start the conversation, and we have to help them start the conversation releasing some data. So what would be the number one data set that you would release as a municipality to start the conversation?
I would say age groups. That is a very, very, in census, I would say age group. what age groups that is telling you in one municipality how many 1-year-olds do we have, how many 2-year-olds, how many 5-year-olds, how many 10-year-olds. Because when you're planning, it tells you in 10 years, assuming no one dies, these are how many people we're going to have in the labor force. In 8 years, these are how many people we're going to have, and how many of these are going to become drinkers. Something like that. So it helps you in planning. So when it comes to a census, I think age groups are just beyond gender distribution and all. Just age groups are very, very important for future planning and resource allocation. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Really practical. Yeah. Was that one free, Lynette?
Sorry?
Was that free advice?
No, send me a bill.
Yeah, I will be sending an invoice later. No, that's all free. It's my service to this good cause by you guys.
Antonio, we'll send you a finder's fee though.
All right. We will contact you.
I'm going to need a percentage on that. No, you can keep it. All right.
Well, thank you, Lynette, so much for joining us. We're going to do a quick write-up, a short write-up of this, and publish it along with the recording. And hopefully we'll stay in touch. And I'm really excited to hear about your successes with data science, or datascience.co.ke. But we'll publish that as well. Yeah, and hopefully this next week. We don't have a confirmed guest for next Friday's hangout, but as soon as that comes, into knowledge, we'll let everyone know. But right now, as of right now, we have a confirmed guest for August 15th, and that's CrimeBot in Jamaica. So hopefully, folks will join us for that. Yeah.
Oh, we do have.
Wait, a question.
We do have one question that came in.
Okay.
All right.
Obo asks, "Hello, Lynette. Would like to know what research projects you're currently carrying out related to open data for development." So.
Well, I cannot, unfortunately, speak. I used to love when I could speak about everything, but I cannot, unfortunately, give all the details. But this is more along the lines of working with citizens and trying to see how to, make sure that they become interested in open data and in creating the demand for more data to be released by government.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. And Obo just got it in.
I hope that answered your question, Obo. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and happy weekend. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye, Lynette.
Bye.